Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Uyunglele, touchdown Ross! They go with a run at 33, and that's blown up right at the point. John Ridgway.
Four-man front for the Dogs, drifting back in coverage. There comes the pressure. Way Walker, shot out of a cannon.
Bennett, near side, pass is caught. George Pickens.
Gary lost a yard his first one. They bank it to him, and smothering the quarterback is Tyreek Smith.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another new season of Draft on Tap. I'm Aldo Gandia. The gentlemen above me are Danny Shimon and Niel Stopczynski. And this is going to be a very special Draft on Tap because most of the show is going to be devoted to the changes over at Hallis Hall. Let me begin by asking these two gentlemen how they're doing. How are you guys?
I am pumped. Ready. It's draft season. We're talking about next year already, talking about finding some prospects. And a little thing happened this week, and we got a new general manager and a new head coach. So there's a ton to talk about today. I'm pumped to be with you guys back on Draft on Tap.
I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say. How are you, Neil?
I'm great, man. Feels so good to be back. It's been a while, right? It's been a while since the three of us got on the show together.
Yeah, you're probably at about right now. You're probably starting to get over all the hard work that you did on last year's Draft on Tap. And now you got to start again.
Pretty much.
That's wild. All right, well, let's get right into it because there's a lot of people in the chat room already asking questions, already want to know what you think of these hires and so forth. And Danny, you've already kind of shown some of your optimism, some of your excitement. So put it into words for us. How are you feeling about these two hires?
Well, I don't want to say optimism or excitement. I mean, first of all, like initially I was like, I've been all over the place in terms of my emotional roller coaster. Like, I was like, I was kind of disappointed because obviously, as I said before, I wanted for the GM spot, I wanted someone that's been there, done that. My top guy was Rick Smith. I never believed he ever got interviewed. There was a report that there was mutual interest between Smith and the Bears, but that never happened. The other guy was Jeff Ireland. I know he got interviewed, but he was never brought back. So Ryan Poles, when he was introduced or named the candidate or the new GM, I should say, I know he was a finalist with the Giants and also was potentially a finalist with the Vikings as well. So texted some people around the league and got nothing but positives about him. Guy's a hard worker. Guy's easy to get along with. He's someone that does a thorough work in terms of his scouting. In terms of he's a very good evaluator. He's a guy that I was told he will fix your offensive line issues. So those are all positives, and those all got me thinking. All right, but the only thing is it's I keep going back to all right. It's another young up and coming executive, 36 years old, getting his first big job like the GM job, and really learning on a job with the Chicago Bears. And I was kind of hoping for someone who kind of had been there or done that. And so that was my initial reaction with the Ryan Poles hiring. And then going over to the coaching side, same thing. I wanted someone to come in here. Not necessarily, I don't want looking just for an offensive guy or a defensive guy. I was looking for a head coach who had done it before, someone who had experience. And we went ahead and we talked about this, Aldo, on one of the Bear Truth episodes where I gave you my list. And top of my list was Josh McDaniels, guys like Doug Peterson, Todd Bowles, Jim Caldwell was on that list as well. And, I was hoping that Caldwell would come in. There are some rumblings in terms of the potential staff that he was going to put together. The other finalists, obviously, Dan Quinn, another guy that's coached before, took a team to a Super Bowl, similar to Caldwell, same thing, well liked around the league, was going to put together supposedly a really good coaching staff. And really, Eberflus was a guy that I was just kind of getting to know in terms of, as a head coach candidate. So of course, he's the guy that comes in and gets the position today. So but the more I'm learning about Eberflus, the more, you get a little excited, right? This guy that's well-spoken, well-coached. The guy's a teacher. Guys like Rod Marinelli, vouch for this guy. So, there are positives with both hires. there are some drawbacks with both hires, a lot of question marks that I have that I was hoping would have kind of been answered prior to the, or with the hirings. But still, we got to give both guys a fair chance and see what they do. So my main thing now, and although, we've talked about it, Neil and I have talked about it, with a guy like Eberflus, with his background being in defense, he must have put down a hell of a plan in terms of his coaching staff. Who's his offensive coordinator? Who's his quarterbacks coach? Who's his offensive line coach? I need to know this, and I'm hoping that he gave the Bears, Ryan Poles, this list, and that he's going to deliver. Because I heard that name of that passing game coordinator from the Eagles today, and I know he's been in the league for like 12, 15 years, but that's not going to make me excited about him bringing this guy in, a guy who's never been a play caller in the NFL, to kind of try and groom and establish, Justin Fields here as a quarterback. So I'm holding out hope that he goes and gets an established play caller. Now, names like Jim Caldwell have been thrown out there. There's Kevin O'Connell from the Rams. Supposedly he wants to get away from the Sean McVay shadow and run his own, offense here. And I think obviously with Eberflus is being the defensive guy, the offensive coordinator is going to have full reign on the offense. So if the offense is successful, Justin Fields develops and does well, someone's going to come knocking for that offensive coordinator potentially being a head coach. So I think that's where this position could be very popular amongst assistants out there. So I'm hoping he comes in and brings in someone that's going to be able to give the Bears a good defense, a solid foundation, and help Justin Fields in his development.
Neil, what do you got, brother?
Yeah, I mean, with Ryan, number one, with both these guys, I'm optimistic. In a couple different ways. With Ryan Poles, I didn't know a thing about the guy once the announcement came through. And so, after a couple of days of looking some things up, studying his background, talked to a couple guys within that organization just to see what they thought of him. And of course, I mean, anytime you do that type of thing, you're going to get back a bunch of positives and over the top superlatives and things like that. But kind of like what Danny said, one guy said, I think he'll do a good job. He's smart, very organized. And another guy said, specifically, he's going to treat you right. He says, he's a good man. He's laid back. He knows ball. He's very, very intelligent in terms of his evaluations. He's a guy that, if you look at his background, and really with both of these guys, if you look at their backgrounds, how they came up, I draw a parallel to my own career in the sense that, at one point I was the very lowest man in the totem pole you could possibly get, right? And both these guys, they started as a low man in the totem pole. Ryan Poles was I think he was like a recruiting or staff assistant at Boston College. Jumped on at Kansas City at age 24, by Scott Pioli. And he survived two GM changes. He went from Scott Pioli to John Dorsey. Mm-hmm. And John Dorsey retained him, promoted him, and then Brett Veach came in, retained him, and promoted him again. And so now he's 36. He's a GM of the Bears. He's a guy that combines like old school and new school approach. He has a modern philosophical way of evaluating. The other thing is Field Yates. I think both those guys were at the very bottom, together, getting started as scouting industry, and Field Yates has nothing but glowing, reviews of the guy, both as a person and as a professional. So, in terms of Ryan Poles, I'm very optimistic. The thing about it is that, he gets inside the four walls of Hallis Hall, and you had, a pair of guys wanting to go a certain way with the coach, a pair of guys wanting to go another way with the coach. He went his own way, so he's actually owning his own process. Right. So that has me feeling good that he's not going to get a whole lot of interference from guys that aren't nearly as qualified to make decisions as he might be. And the guy that he took, Matt Eberflus, you look at his background, started off at Toledo as a student staff assistant, right? Student coach. Spent pretty much the entire 90s at Toledo, which was a ridiculously winning culture at that time, in the MAC conference. He went from Toledo to Missouri. To be the defensive coordinator there for 9 seasons. And that was probably the one time when I actually had a run-in with Matt Eberflus. Was when he was a defensive coordinator in Missouri. The 2008 season, when I was at Northwestern, we played them in the Alamo Bowl. And, if you think about the history of Missouri now, you're not talking about Alabama, you're not talking about Texas. They're not a blue blood. They're barely relevant. But, as the DC and then also the associate head football coach, he got named that in 2006, halfway through his tenure there. At one point, he had top 10 passing defense. They won the 2007 and 2008 Big 12 North. The first bowl game after the first Big 12 North title stifled Arkansas in the Cotton Bowl, and then they played us in the Alamo Bowl. In the second half, I'm just going to tell you guys that the fourth quarter and overtime, we couldn't get anything done. So it was actually impressive to watch that defense play. They had some studs all over the ball. One guy that specifically sticks out in my mind is the Weatherspoon kid. He made plays all over the field, and so he goes from Missouri and goes and coaches linebackers under Rob Ryan, and then follows Rob Ryan to Dallas. He had Rob Ryan as defensive coordinator at Dallas. He had Monty Kiffin as his next defensive coordinator at Dallas. And one of the things that he was instrumental in was that transition from a 3-4 to a 4-3. Okay. And Rod Marinelli actually, credited Matt Eberflus in 2016, when he was named the passing game coordinator. He credited him as being instrumental in that transition. So the thing about Eberflus is that, he's come up with multiple systems. I think he ran multiple at Indianapolis. I think he's most comfortable with the Tampa 2 type of deal, but he has the ability to go ahead and mold his scheme, his defense around the personnel that we have. The last head coach we had was absurdly stubborn on his side of the ball. It would not mold anything to what he had in the personnel department. So he's able to go ahead and mold things around what he has. And the other thing that he's really known for, guys, the other thing that he's known for throughout his career is instantaneous results and developing players. Throughout his career as the linebackers coach at Dallas, he's credited with, developing Sean Lee and Jalen Smith. And those guys are outwardly vocal about how he helped them become the players that they became. He turned busts and average guys into players into Pro Bowlers. Transformed average defenses into defenses that rank in the top half of the league, or in terms of Missouri, that was a top class defense. It was a top 10 defense at one time in terms of passing game. So just banking off of that, he comes to Indianapolis, and he was Chris Ballard's guy. He was hired to be to run the defense before Frank Reich came in. Had to do a little bit of gymnastics to get Frank Reich on board, but when it comes down to it, Chris Ballard trusted that guy to be the dude to run the defense for the Indianapolis Colts. And defense that ranked 30th in scoring and total defense the year before, then came around the very next year and ranked 10th and 11th respectively in both those two specific areas. And also, climbed the ladder in defensive rankings in terms of pass defense, run defense. He turned Anthony Walker and Darius Leonard into dudes. Over the course of the past 4 years, the Colts ranked second in turnovers. That's a big thing with him. He's going to pound the table of getting turnovers and being disciplined on that side of the ball, being aggressive, swarming to the ball carrier. It's going to be aggressive, but it's also going to be smart. I'm really excited with what he's going to bring. He's another guy that's also interviewed for positions too. Both these guys have interviewed for GM, head coach positions respectively. In the past, few years, we talked about Poles interviewing for. He was a finalist for the Panthers last year. He was a finalist for the Giants and Vikings this year. Eberflus was a finalist for the Browns job in 2019. So both these guys, well respected, very optimistic about what they bring. I'm not huge on retreads, which is why I wasn't amped up about Caldwell. I wasn't amped up about Quinn, about Leslie Frazier, any of these guys that have been. And now, granted, Dan Quinn has gone and won a lot of games, went to a Super Bowl and the whole thing. But outside of that, it was very average. Jim Caldwell did some good things at the Lions, but overall was very average. Same thing with Leslie Frazier with the Vikings. And so I'm really, really amped up to try something new, to see what happens. These guys, like I said, they come with a lot of positive reviews from their peers, and let's hang in there and be optimistic. Let's see what Eberflus does with that offensive coordinator position. Hopefully he brings in a stud. And like Danny said, that guy's basically going to be the head coach of the offensive side of the ball. So
just the one thing real quick on initially I was, when you, like I said earlier, that when the names were announced, I was a little bit not confused, but not pumped up or amped up about either one. But, a couple of good points that Niel brought up about the GM. I'm already forgetting his name. Jesus Christ. Ryan Poles. Thank you so much. The 13 years with the Chiefs, he has not been with just one GM, as opposed to Ryan Pace when he came here from the Saints under Mickey Loomis. He was with, like Scott Pioli, then went to John Dorsey, and he went to Brett Veach. But more importantly, he's been there for 3 different coaching regimes. He was there for Todd Haley, Romeo Crennel, and Andy Reid. And how that's important is that he's altered and he's been able to scout for 3 different systems, 3 different schemes. So that's important and valuable experience that I believe he's gained through the Chiefs. So yeah, he's been with one organization, but he's gone through three different regimes, both in the front office and in the coaching staff. So to me, that's valuable experience. And the other thing I want to touch on real quick with Neil in terms of, you want retreads, but you know what? Bill Belichick is a retread. Pete Carroll was a retread. Bruce Arians is a retread. So, I mean, it's retreads. If you're a good coach, you're a good coach, whether, they all get fired at one point. So I just thought, like, like guys like Caldwell, Josh McDaniel would have been a guy that I really would have been interested in talking to, at least interview him, bring him in. But, that's why I wanted to get guys that are kind of had success in the league, kind of would come in and know how, or have at least a good plan for, the most important guy on this team right now, in my opinion, Justin Fields.
Yeah, I agree with Neil, though, about retreads, and certainly there are exceptions. There are some that have had some great success on their second, sometimes even third jobs. But guys like Jim Caldwell, and no offense to Jim Caldwell, because he has had a lot of success with the Colts and with the Lions, but we know that's his ceiling. I mean, he had Peyton Manning, and he had Matthew Stafford, who was on his way to a conference championship game. So we know that that's about where he can take a team as a head coach. And so I was also concerned that even though he had those great quarterbacks, you still need to have a run game, and he never devoted his energy towards developing a run game. People have told me, well, he didn't have great running backs. That may be so, although Joseph Adai was a first-round draft pick, but the fact of the matter is that if you're 4 years with one organization and 3 years with another, don't you think that at some point you got to demand from your general manager, get me a stud running back and I'll get you some playoff wins? So that's concerning to me about a guy like Jim Caldwell. And with Dan Quinn, it's almost unforgivable what he did at the Super Bowl, losing a 25-point lead. And just that alone is such a sour taste that I'd hate to have him as a head coach for the Chicago Bears, although I know that's an isolated incident, and I know that he deserves another chance because he's been very successful in many ways, and his defense is great. But I like the idea of trying to find that gem in the stone, that new prolific coach and general manager tandem that they're going to be together for the next 10 years and have great drafts and great results with those players.
Yeah, but Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy were that gem in the stone, right? Phil Emery and Mark Trustman were those gems in the stones, correct?
Yeah,
I just feel like we go through these, first-time head coaches, and we allow these guys to learn on the job. And I just wanted someone that has been in the league, has had success and failures like Dan Quinn. But I think that you just talked about the Super Bowl failure in terms of blowing that lead. I think that is a learning experience from Dan Quinn, and I feel like he may have or should have learned from that experience. And if they're ever put in that position again, he would manage to clock at a much better rate or much better process. So I feel like if some of these people have made these mistakes, they can learn from them. That I just wanted guys. I was just tired of the hey, learn on the job kind of guys, right? The first time head coach, first time GM, you learn here at our expense, ours being the fans expense here. Try and build this team together. But like I said, both guys have positive traits. You can't find anybody in the NFL so far. I haven't been able to find anybody that has anything negative to say about either one of these guys. Poles and Eberflus. So those are positives, right? It's like I said, Eberflus comes highly recommended in terms of his ability to control the roster, command the room, be able to demand and get respect out of all 53 players plus the 16 players on the practice squad. So that was a key thing as well. I didn't just want a great, innovative offensive coordinator. I just want a damn good defensive coordinator. I wanted a guy that was going to be a damn good leader, a damn good coach, and a guy that was going to go out there and be able to control and have every single player on the football team follow them. And so far from what we've heard or from what we've been able to kind of dig on Matt Eberflus, he's a guy that's gonna get everyone to follow him. So we'll see what happens.
To be fair, just going on the theme of first time head coaches with no experience, talking to one of my guys inside the Colts organization earlier today, his thoughts on that, number one, like, he's a big fan of the hire. He said he always felt like they operated with 2 head coaches the past 4+ years anyways. The guy's tough. He's demanding. He'll get the most out of Roquan specifically. He said it's only a matter of time before we lost him, until meaning the Colts. So if the feeling was generally that they had 2 head coaches on staff and Eberflus was essentially the head coach of his side of the ball, I feel pretty good about it. I'm not sure exactly that he's a first-time head coach in the grandest sense of the word. He certainly has had control of at least half that football team since he's been in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but now the clock management stuff, when they call timeouts, to call 4 and 4, these are all going to fall on him now. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be. I'm not saying he's going to be a boss or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, I just wanted someone who had been there and done that. But we'll see what happens.
I hear you. Let me play. Tony the Pod Boss sent me this on Twitter about an hour ago. It's a clip of Matt Eberflus in a Zoom meeting. I said the name wrong, right? Eberflus in a meeting, and this is what he was talking about. One of the cultural things that he does with his team.
Yeah, so we're always searching for guys that are that can play 8 guys on the defensive line, and we really base it mostly off of our loaf system and the hustle system. So if a guy comes in and he plays 25 plays, but a third of his plays are loafs, we will decrease his reps and until he can play at the level we need him to play at in terms of his hustle and his hitting and his execution. And that's across the board. And when a guy shows that he can be on our all hustle team, which is a 90% hustle grade, then he can play as many plays as he's able to execute. And there's guys in there that are doing that, so we're always searching for guys.
That to me is so impressive. And one of the other things that I read about him is that he is that type of coach that really preaches all out effort and playing to the end of the whistle. And if there is a ball on the ground, you go after it. And that's the type of culture he really instills in his players and is very, very adamant about that. And being a Bears fan, we've seen a lot of players, especially recently, not tackling a ball carrier when he's down on the ground and the guy gets up and scores a touchdown, and other instances like that where the team is not going all out. So I like the fact that this guy is going to come into Halisaw and he's going to change the culture and make players accountable for those little mistakes. So when, Eddie Jackson or Jalen Johnson doesn't tackle a guy on the ground, that's not going to be forgiven. He's going to be held to account. So I really appreciate that.
This is Lovie Smith 2.0. That's what it is, because that's what Lovie Smith was. It was everyone flies to the football. If same thing with Lovie Smith defense. And this guy, his mentor was Rod Marinelli. So, and then of course Rod Marinelli, his relationship with Lovie Smith. So he has that base Tampa 2 defense. And then same thing, you fly to the football. Roquan probably we moved to a weak side linebacker, just fill that Lance Briggs role, if you will. Everyone flies the football. You got to see guys punching at the football. The peanut punch will be back. And yeah, he will hold players accountable. Lovey had the same kind of system in terms of the loafing system. If you got a loaf, a certain amount of loafs, you will lose playing time. So it's basically Lovie Smith 2.0 right here.
Yeah. The great thing is that that comes all the way back. If you trace the lineage of that comes from Tony Dungy's team philosophy. Mm-hmm. I was looking this up today. If you look at the very first page of the playbook that Tony Dungy handed out to his assistants and to his players, Tony Dungy team philosophy, it's a 10 bullet point deal. It's mental preparation, no mental mistakes, fundamental soundness, physicality, and you're talking in mindset and total team effort, flying to the football. Your opponent goes backwards, embrace the contact. Right? Hustle. You cannot beat it. Those are the kind of things that you just can't teach. Quickness. The quicker you are, the harder it is for them to score. Strength is important here, which is why the weight room is going to be probably a big time focus on this team going forward. Who that head strength coach is going to be and the program that they get these guys into is going to matter. The next thing, consistency. You're talking day in, day out. No ups, no downs. Be the guy that your teammates and coaches can count on. Physical toughness. Fight through the bumps and bruises. Understand the difference between pain and injury. Right? Discipline, and that's a big thing. The big asterisk there is attention to detail. The little things matter in execution. One little breakdown can break down the entire defense. And going this specifically on what we were just talking about, the gang tackling is a big bullet point. All 11 guys, flying to the football. Nothing is more discouraging than knowing you're about to get machine gunned by the defense. And then finally, team unity. Play as a team, be unselfish, respect your teammate, be honest with yourself, be positive. And ultimately, guys, have fun. I mean, we're playing a game, and that's the best game in the world. So those are the things that he got from Marinelli.
Nope. We
lost Niel.
We lost Niel, but go ahead and pick up on that thought.
Yeah, just to carry on that thing. So basically, like Lovie Smith, like I said, 2.0 here. The other thing with this is I really didn't want to go back to Lovie Smith cover 2 base defense, and that's one of the things I was kind of looking into Matt Eberflus in terms of what he does. But Stephen Holder, who follows the Colts, is a very good writer on Twitter. Did a nice long thread there in terms of he dug into Eberflus's defense last year, and I think he said something around 60% of the time he played man coverage instead of zone. So as long as he's flexible in his system, because guys, the NFL caught up to that cover 2. They know how to beat it. Offenses know how to beat that cover 2. So if you play straight cover 2 without any sort of variations to it or making different adjustments here and there, you're going to get beat. So, but the one thing encouraging thing I read is that he played a little bit more man this past season than before, and he's big on disguising coverages. He will not line up pre-snap into what he wants the defense to be. He wants to wait until the ball is snapped before he has the safeties rotate, whether they're going back into cover 2 or they're coming back or cover 1 or cover 3 or whatnot. So that's kind of similar to what a lot of defensive coordinators are doing now, especially what Vic Fangio was doing a lot of when he was here with the Bears, disguising his coverages pre-snap. So that's a positive, right? He wants all his corners to be a majority of his corners to be able to play both man and a majority off coverage, meaning that they're going to give space and then be able to kind of plant, rate the quarterback in the pocket and come downhill and attack it and secure a tackle. This team will be, I should say, a better tackling team than last year's team because they emphasize tackling. His defense emphasizes tackling. They actually practice tackling. So, I think, although you mentioned that, Eddie Jackson and Jalen Johnson not tackling the receiver on the ground, I think that's not going to happen. That shouldn't happen anymore with this team going forward here.
Niel, I know that you finished. I think it sounded to me like you were just finishing up your thought when your signal just gave out there. But was there anything that you wanted to add before we move on?
No, I was just saying it's a beautiful thing when you see the lineage of how a defensive philosophy just kind of comes up throughout different coaches, different schemes, different staffs, throughout the course of a few years. I mean, the Tampa 2 thing has been around for about 27 or so years now. When Tony Dungy got to Tampa, I think it was 1995. Yeah. And he'll even say like he doesn't want to be credited with it necessarily. He took it from Chuck Noll and the Steelers back in the 70s. That's basically the way that they played ball when he was around Chuck Noll and those guys. So it's just really interesting to look historically back on the way things evolve. I just wanted to have that drop the mic effect by leaving the conversation after the.
That was good. One of the things that I'm afraid that a lot of Bears fans are going to get upset about with Eberflus's defense is the fact that he does not blitz much. He likes to send those 4 guys in and then have everybody drop back and keep everything in front of him. And that is going to lead to lack of quarterback pressures. And in fact, I think that the Colts were somewhere in the 20s with quarterback pressures, but they were second overall, as you said earlier, Danny, in creating turnovers. How do you guys feel about that type of approach, that defensive philosophy? I mean, it's pretty common now, but what do you guys think about it?
Yeah, Vic Fangio wasn't big on blitzing. I mean, Sean Desai got a little bit, blitz happy towards the end because it was, Mac was out, Hakeem Hicks was out. They're not generating much pressure on the quarterback, and you saw them become more blitzes there, especially with Roquan Smith. But it's not something different that we've seen here. What he didn't have in Indy, he has here at the Bears. If this, the roster stays the way it is right now, he's got 2 premier defensive ends. Both Quinn and Mac are going to not be hand in the ground defensive ends. They're going to rush, from there. So he's going to have 2 premier pass rushers coming off the edge. Probably my guess is that maybe they bring back Bilal Nichols, make him a 3 technique. And that's something that I've talked about before in the past, that he probably fits that profile. being a guy that kind of hits the gap, shoots up the gap, gets that pressure, penetrates the backfield. I'm not sure if Eddie Goldman's going to be here in terms of he could probably play the one technique and just kind of be a guy that takes on blockers and generates whatever pass rush he can in terms of just bullying guys into the backfield. So we'll see how that does. But yeah, he's going to depend mainly on his front four. Obviously, he had Brenston Buckner with the Colts, but in terms of consistent outside pressure, pass rush, he didn't have guys like Quinn or Max. So I think that's going to help him there as well. That interior pass rush is going to have to get more consistent. I'm assuming Akeem Hicks is not going to be on this football team. I would love to see him kind of bring him back and see if they can fit him in this team or in this system. But I'm thinking he's gone as well. So that interior pressure is going to be a little bit much more important now with this system, because you want all four guys collapsing that pocket, rushing that quarterback, and then allowing you guys who are probably driving back in coverage to be able to, look at the ball, jump those routes, and then, make turnovers.
By the way, I want to thank Scox for always retweeting our stuff on social media, really helping our visibility with the stuff that we're doing here at the Barroom. Really appreciate that, Scox. And he's got some breaking news for us. So it looks
I saw that Panthers, yeah.
Chris Tabor is going over to the Panthers, and that Eberflus is targeting the Raiders, the interim. I think he's still the interim head coach with the Raiders, Rick Bisaccia.
Yeah.
So
he's a pretty good special teams coach. He's a pretty good special teams coach. I think he did a hell of a job with the Raiders, taking on all that was going on, turmoil in terms of off the field stuff, and then leading them to that playoff game as well. So I think he's a hell of a coach. It sucks to see Tabor go, but if you're going to be able to get a guy like a Rich Bisaccia, that's going to be a nice replacement there as well. So
yeah, you leadership across the board, don't you?
That's right. Tabor started to get it late in his career here with the Bears, but no, that's a different story. Neil, your thoughts, please.
No, I was just saying with Bisaccia, I mean, you want leadership across the board. That's kind of the whole point of assembling a kick-ass staff. You want your offensive coordinator to essentially be another head coach. You want your special teams coordinator to have that kind of experience, to have that sort of influence on the team. Mm-hmm. I'm really interested and excited to see what he does with his staff that he's going to bring in. But I mean, ultimately there's a lot to be done on this roster now. You mentioned you're not sure if Goldman's coming back. I have him down as under contract till 2024. Is that correct?
He's under contract, but I just don't know if they're gonna try and make maneuver the cap, get some more cap relief, and if they think they can get someone else there to come in and be a one technique, because obviously with the 3-4, that nose tackle, the zero technique was a very, very important position. Now he's more of a guy that takes up blocks as a one technique, and guy that maybe he can generate a bull rush and drive that guy backwards, but he's not a guy that's going to be necessarily shooting those gaps and getting off. That's more for that 3 technique guy. So we'll see if it fits him in here. I just don't know if what they're thinking about in terms of the future. But yeah, good point, Neil. In terms of this roster, talk about because now we're looking at, all right, middle linebacker is going to be a primo need position here, and with only 5 draft picks, guys, I don't know if they're going to be able to address everything here with through the draft. So we're going to be scouting middle linebackers, because like I said, my prediction is you're going to see Roquan Smith moved outside to the will linebacker position, allow him to make more of those splash plays, their interceptions, be able to hopefully get better in coverage, make a shit ton of tackles out there, basically play that Lance Briggs role. And then now you need an athletic linebacker to be able to kind of drop back in the middle of that defense, get to his landmark, and then be able to drive on that football if anything comes in underneath him as well. So we'll see what they do here at middle linebacker. But linebacker is going to be a need. Defensive line, depending on what happens there. Goldman, Akeem Hicks, Mario Edwards. I think he's a guy that can fit that 3 technique a little bit there as well. So they gives you some depth. But who they're going to keep there. I think the ends are good with Quinn and Khalil Mack and Aldo. You're going to be happy. Robert Quinn's going to have his hand in the ground. You've been calling for it. You've been telling me that Robert Quinn is better at pass rusher with his hand in the ground. He's going to have his hand in the ground now. So, and obviously Travis Gibson will back those guys up. And then I think Jeremiah Tuche is also on this roster. I think he's got a one year deal. So I'm not sure if he now fits, because he's more of that outside linebacker kind of position. So we'll see how that goes. But you need a strong side linebacker, a guy that can probably carry tight ends down the field and better in coverage, a guy that can come up and be a sure tackler. You're going to need a safety. You're going to need a guy that's going to be able to come up and tackle guys. And, there are some free agents out there that we can go over, in terms of, later on in the show, or maybe, other shows coming up. But there are going to be some free agents you can go out there and get. You're going to, you're going to need everything, right? Everything other than quarterback and running back. You're going to need everything on this football team.
Yeah, and everybody's saying, oh, they got a lot of money in cap, but there's not a lot of players
work to
signed.
do, though.
Like 28, 29 players are signed for next season. So that's why there's so much cap money. So it's going to be difficult to make that big free agent signing unless
right. You're gonna have to make smart, more quantity than quality probably with these free agent signings this year.
Yeah. Neil, do you see a possibility of them maybe landing a quality top paid wide receiver or an offensive lineman? Or do you think that we might have to struggle for one more season with the cap issues that have been presented? Because then in 2023, the cap is going to increase dramatically because all that TV money comes in, and hopefully we don't have another pandemic to slow things down in terms of the cap increase. But we're going to definitely see a tight budget year. But do you think, Neil, that perhaps there could be a big free agent signing coming?
Well, see, this is what Poles is supposed to be really good at is making use of the resources that he has at hand, right? And being really smart about it. And so hopefully, and, Danny, to, kind of piggyback off one of the things you said, and not to be spoiler to anybody, but we're not going to be able to address all these needs just in this draft because of
just 5 picks.
5 picks, and most of them are on day 3.
Yep.
We got 2 on day 2, early second, a mid third, and then we got 2 5s and a 6. So our draft selections this year are, unless he can make some magic happen and move some capital and regain some of these draft picks back, we don't have a whole lot of we're not going to have a whole lot of fun on draft weekend except for these 5 guys. So it's going to have to be smart. It's going to have to be resourceful. It's going to have to be savvy, I think is a really good word to use, because $42 million, granted it goes up in 2023, but there's a lot of holes that need to be filled. There's a lot of strategic placements that need to be made. I think that just looking at who we have free agent wise or signed wise on defense, you got to keep the able-bodied players and make use of what you have. Which then you bring in the idea that Eberflus is really good at making use of what he has. I talked all the time last year about the philosophy of players, positions, plays. Take your personnel and formulate a plan around them. And supposedly that's what he's really good at doing. So it'll be fun to see like what he draws up year 1, and then as we see this roster overturn, as Poles gets a chance to go ahead and fill his roster with what works. It'll be good to see what this actually looks like 3 years down the road, when it actually is Poles guys, when it actually is Eberflus's scheme and everything fits into place.
I think Loretta and I just put something in the chat saying that they're going to trade guys for picks. Who do you have to trade, guys? Who are you going to trade? David Montgomery is probably your best player on offense, right? And he'll get you what? Maybe a second, maybe a 3rd round pick. I mean, their running backs aren't in high demand right now, right? Darnell Mooney's the only receiver. He ain't going to get you a 1st or 2nd round pick. You don't have nothing to trade really, right? Other if you want to trade, Robert Quinn or Khalil Mack, but now you're talking about a massive cap hit there. So that's like, 1 step forward, 2 steps back there. So I'm not sure if that's even, an option there. But, if you want to trade down from the 2nd round pick, it should be in like the 38, 39 range. If you want to kind of trade down and garner more picks there, you could probably do that, because there's always going to be teams kind of want to trade up in that high 2nd round and get some players that maybe have fallen. But again, you're looking at one or 2 receivers currently on the roster, right? You're looking at an offensive line that right now, James Daniels, he's a 24-year-old guy that's been starting for the last 4 years, and he's a guy that, in my opinion, should be your starting center next year, right? So do you bring him back and start him at center and then kind of show up that position there? You have multiple guys that can fill in at right guard, whether it's, the combination of Borum or Jenkins. If whoever's not playing right tackle, the other one will play right guard. You have, Alex Barr still on this roster. For me, left tackle is a huge question mark, guys. And neither Borum or Tevin Jenkins are left tackles for me. I think that's the one area. We talked about $42 million in cap space. You can probably create another $10 million with some cuts and maneuvers here as well. So you're gonna have like around $50-some million in cap money. A veteran left tackle is what I'm gonna go out and try and get in the free agent market. Now, Teron Armstead is going to be the primo guy, but he's coming off of 2 injury-filled seasons. But when he's healthy, he's an all-pro left tackle. That might be a little bit too rich for you guys to get right now, because remember, you want to get a guy here maybe for 1 or 2 year deal, and also then eventually draft a successor in the draft. So a guy like Dwayne Brown, with the Seattle Seahawks. He's a guy that's up there in age, but still a consistent left tackle. Maybe he takes a 1 or 2 year deal. You can bring him in here. He can be a stopgap for you. Guys like that. Eric Fisher was with the Colts last year, so he has, maybe he has a relationship with Eberflus. Maybe he can kind of talk him come in here for a 1 or 2 year deal. He's coming off a major injury the previous season. Played okay for the Colts this past year as left tackle. Guys like that are people you're going to want to bring in and just kind of shore up that offensive line for a little bit, at least for a year or two, and then now draft a successor, via the draft.
It's going to take some sleight of hand, some magic by Ryan Poles to attract free agents here, perhaps, at a lesser value than they might be getting somewhere else. He might be able to sell team players that is on the future of our quarterback, Justin Fields, the new culture and so forth. Mule asked a question. What do you think about the free agents, the undrafted or the unrestricted free agents that the Chiefs have on their team?
I was saying, can you bring those guys up right now? Because that's going to be an area they can probably attack there. Right now, 2 guys I can look at: Byron Pringle, a receiver; DeMarcus Robinson, receivers. Those are probably guys you can probably bring in here in terms of guys that can come in and have a role on this team. I'm taking a look at this. Orlando Brown is going to be too much, I think, to be able to, bring him in here in terms of, being a starter there as well. But, a guy like, Charvarius Ward. Yeah, that's a guy that can come in and have a starting cornerback position, So, these are guys, that he has a connection with, a relationship with. Jerron Reed could be a backup defensive lineman here as well. So depending what you do with Eddie Goldman. So, these are some guys that you can kind of bring in here and kind of be stopgap guys. So, Pringle and DeMarcus Robinson can actually start here. So, they're not starting right now with the Chiefs. And I think you bring those guys in here, they can, help immensely.
What do you think about this list, Neil?
I love the Charvarius Ward kid. I loved him during the recruiting process when I was at Mississippi State. I pounded the table for him. Unfortunately, we went a different direction. I don't think that year necessarily cornerback was a need, but to me, you take what we always had a motto. You take what the state gives you, right? So he was probably the number one. He was a JUCO kid though too, but he was probably the number one cornerback regardless of high school or junior college kids in that state, and we didn't take him. That really hurt. He's a big time player. He's shown to be a big time player in the league so far. He's a guy that you'd love to have from a length, size, speed standpoint, explosiveness. Love the Jaron Reed kid too. He was one of those interior defensive linemen from Alabama that was just wreaking havoc during those years when it was them and Clemson going back and forth. DeMarcus Robinson, obviously, he's another one of those super midgets, but damn, he makes plays, right? Byron Pringle, I agree with Danny on that one as well. I think it's kind of funny seeing Kyle Long on this list as a possibility of somebody you can actually bring in and be functional. But
it's actually funny. Is that the same Michael Burton that was here with us at fullback?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Just move that guy off the list, please. I don't want to see that guy.
I'm surprised he's still in the league. Just a verbal punishment he got alone, I thought was going to kick him out of the league. Yeah. Danny, you asked for the Colts free agent list. Give me
because again, now these are going to be guys that Eberflus has a relationship with, right? So he's going to bring probably a couple of guys from the Colts staff as well. So maybe again, we're going to look at they're going to want to bring in guys that they're familiar with, right? So Poles is going to go back to his Chief guys, and then Eberflus is going to go to his Colts guys. So I wonder if we have a pull up list of the Colts players, and maybe there's a linebacker or two he can bring in there and play a middle linebacker for him. Maybe there's a safety in there he might want to bring in and be his his strong safety next to Eddie Jackson. Maybe a cornerback or so. Those are Eric Fisher is the tackle I was talking about. Stopgap tackle we can probably bring in here. Xavier Rhodes is a little high up there in age in terms of a corner. Zach Pascal is a receiver who's got some modest production, in that Colts offense, but he's a guy that could probably come in here and probably compete for a number 2 or number 3 position, just again on a temporary basis until you fill that roster up with more talented players. The Muhammad kid, that's an edge rusher. So I'm not sure if we need that right now, depending on what we do with our 2 guys. TJ Carey is a journeyman cornerback. Marlon Mack is a running back that we probably don't need a running back if we keep things the way they are right now. I'm trying to think of, Sendejo is a guy who was starting for them towards tail end of the year. So is he a guy that's you can kind of bring in here again as a stopgap veteran? some of these guys you're gonna have to look at. I'm trying to see if there's any linebackers there. There's Zaire Franklin. Zaire Franklin was their Sam linebacker, so that could be a guy right there you can probably target. He's a guy who was starting for them at strong side linebacker. Again, the Bears don't have traditionally a strong side linebacker within the last 3 or 4 years, because of their defense. So you go to a 4-3, you're gonna need a strong side linebacker. So these are guys to kind of keep an eye on here. Guys from the Chiefs and guys from the Colts, and see if they can come in here and fill some of these gaps in terms of the areas in which the Bears either need depth or need potential starters.
Any intriguing names there for you, Mr. Stopczynski?
Yeah, I saw those 2 linebackers, Matt Adams and Zaire Franklin, as guys that can come in and make an immediate impact. Going back up the list. I'm not sure if Ibrahim Campbell ever played for the Colts. I didn't watch, admittedly, a lot of Colts games this year, but he was a damn good player at Northwestern. I remember I was part of bringing him in there when I was working for those guys. I like Xavier Rhodes a lot. Again, he's getting up there in age, but he's still a very productive player and we need bodies in the cornerback room that can function, man.
And Molly Cox is a tight end that could be another number 2 or number 3 tight end. Remember, Jimmy Graham's gone. I'm not sure what the depth is going to be behind Cole Kmet there. So I could be another guy that could look at target here as well.
Yeah, and I mean, with Eberflus's history as being a DB coach, that's kind of how he initially came up. The coaching ranks was as a DB coach. Went into transition to coaching linebackers and became a DC and also linebackers coach. But with his history of developing DBs, like, you really hope that you don't need to bring in corners. You hope that he can make something really good out of Thomas Graham. We saw some flashes this year of some really good stuff out of a guy that should have honestly been a higher draft pick than what he was. He was a big time player that just slipped because he sat out all of 2020. And kind of went out of sight, out of mind a little bit. But we saw what you and I, Danny, like what we originally talked about all last year, especially Senior Bowl week, was how good of a job he did. I know I was pounding the table for him, and I was amped as hell that we actually got the kid.
Thomas Graham, and I think also Kendall Vilder. I think those guys play a little bit better on off coverage. I know they're smaller guys, they're not they're not the bigger body guys, but they're both aggressive in terms of being able to plant and just attack downhill. So I think those guys would kind of benefit with this change in defense. Now the other thing is Kari Willis is a starting safety for these guys, and him coming out of Michigan State, I thought had no chance of being a full-time starter at the NFL. But Eberflus, to his credit, has made him a damn good starter there at with the Colts. So guys like that, guys that are physical, that can bring that thump, that physical presence to that secondary at safety, I think are going to be wanted here now, as opposed to what, not that they weren't wanted here previously, but I think they're going to be a focal point here, especially with this 4-3 Tampa 2 defense. That strength is up the middle. You're talking about the outside linebacker, you're talking about the edge guys, but the middle linebacker and those safeties are very important in this defense. And
the strong safety is the guy that needs to be the thumper too. For A. Jackson go back to being his ball hawking self and just floating around in open space. That strong safety guy needs to come up and lay the wood on people. Think John Lynch back in,
wouldn't it be awesome?
The Tampa 2. That would be amazing. Get Mike Brown.
I was gonna say, wouldn't it be awesome if they bring in Peanut Tillman to teach these guys the peanut punch?
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't pay him $15 an hour like they were offering Olin Kreutz. I think a little more than that. But just kind of bring him in here and see if they can just teach the peanut punch to all these guys. I mean, Darius Leonard, they taught him that. He's one of the best now in terms of the NFL, being able to get that ball out of there, using that peanut punch move. And I think if you can bring someone like Peanut Tillman or some of these guys like Mike Brown and just teach these guys, these players, I think that'll be a pretty cool experience to see those guys in training camp running around with these guys.
Yeah, bring him in as a senior, defensive consultant. Give him a really good, quality control type of contract. Something that's gonna, make him and his family happy, and just get these guys caught up. They obviously were not doing a good enough job of number one tackling, but number two being physical, the entire time, after Vic Fangio left, and that has been the bane of my existence. So watching the Bears play defense, since Vic Fangio, yeah, I mean these corners, the thing about it is that they got to be agile and fluid enough. They got to be spiders in space. They also have to be able to be quick and spike to the ball. Whenever anything goes into the flat, or you get an outside run, they got to be able to come up, tackle the football, just be physical dudes. They also got to play a little bit of a jam ball, at the line of scrimmage. So
Perfect example.
guys that are athletic and physical and explosive, strong, big enough not to get pushed around, and able to play outside leverage, force these receivers inside so the linebackers can do their jobs.
But the one thing with this defense, and look at a guy like Nathan Vasher, going back to the Lovey days, right? He wasn't a guy that was good in terms of one-on-one, staying in phase downfield, but he was instinctive. He was a guy that excelled off coverage. He was a good job of being able to time be able to plant and time his jump on that route, and he made plays. He got his hands on the football, caused a broken PBU, or he got an interception. So guys like that, you don't have to be necessarily a great cover corner now to play in this defense. You just got to be able to be instinctive and also be able to kind of plant and come forward. So you have that physical ability. The other thing is speed, guys. We're going to see speed all over this defense, and that's what this defense predicates. It's more speed. Neil, you're talking about previously you're talking about being physical, and that's the one thing that I didn't like about the cover two or this defense under Lovie Smith was it wasn't always as physical as I wanted it to be. The defense was physical under Vic Fangio, and I loved it. So if you're gonna do that, because they're gonna bring slimmer players, more athletic players, guys that fly to the football. So that's the one thing that's the one little bit drawback. So that's why I'm saying if Eberflus can. And I should probably go back and take a look at some Colts tape and just kind of break those games down and just see how he utilizes his personnel there. But I want to see some variation. Right? I don't want to see that just playing cover two. I want to be able to see his ability to be able to disguise coverages like Stephen Holder, who I was talking about earlier. And I think you may have dropped off there, but Stephen Holder, who's a writer who covers the Colts, did a good job on Eberflus in terms of talking about. He plays at base Tampa too, but this year he played a lot of man coverage. He also did a lot of great jobs in terms of disguising his coverages pre-snap, kind of trying to confuse the quarterback, and then rotating his safeties or bringing a blitz or all that stuff. So I want to continue to see more of that development. And now you have the two studs on the outside. Utilize those guys. And now again, if you want to just rush those four guys and just use more coverage, more disguise, that might be a better way to go ahead and create more turnovers in terms of interceptions and all that stuff.
Gentlemen, what is next for this combination of Eberflus and Poles to do is they've got to start, filling up this coaching staff. That's the first priority. And then secondly, going through those meetings, talking about what the offense is going to look like. They basically have to coach now the coaches so that everybody's on the same page. And then concurrently, it's going to be Ryan Poles working with his new draft team, because he isn't firing anybody from the draft, because they've been working the last several months preparing for this upcoming draft. And so that's the team that he's going to rely on to make draft picks this upcoming April. And so we know that there's a lot of good scouts with the Chicago Bears. Neil, you've talked to some of them and so forth. Do you have any indication at all from some of your contacts or from some of your contacts about what the feeling is in the scouting room with the Chicago Bears about what's going on with the hiring of Eberflus?
It's funny you ask. I haven't heard from anybody just yet. I was more or less contacting guys within the Colts, within the Chiefs, just to kind of get a feel for, just see what kind of verbiage they use, what kind of vernacular that they put along with the names Eberflus and Poles, because I think a lot of times you can tell a lot about a guy by the type of adjectives they use. Haven't gotten to the point of reaching out to my Bears guys yet, but I wanted to make that kind of a priority going into the weekend, just to kind of get some feel for
it's a busy
if the house is going to be cleaned, or hopefully not, because like I said before, guys, like that scouting department is full of legit evaluators that do a great job, that excel at a high level of what they do. Our problem was that the decisions at the top were subpar.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Neil, go ahead and finish your.
I was going to say, so hopefully Poles does a good job of getting with these guys, seeing what he has already in the cabinet. Keeping a few of these guys around, because there's a handful of guys in the scouting department right now that can easily just hit the ground running with whatever he wants.
So there's reports that he's already hired, Ryan Poles has hired Ian Cunningham, director of player personnel with the Philadelphia Eagles. He is going to be coming in. I'm not sure in terms of, is he going to be a assistant GM? Is he going to be just what position he's going to have with the Bears? But that's reports right now that he's bringing in Ian Cunningham for a high level position within the scouting department. Now the scouts, in terms of the Bear scouts, their contracts are through May, so they're going to be here through the draft. So because they've been working on this draft class under Ryan Pace and under the previous regime here. So all their notes, all that stuff, it's going to be Bears property. They're going to be here with the Bears through the draft, and then after the draft, typically in May is when you see these scouts then leave and you see the new regime bring in their guys. So, but yeah, other than just Ian Cunningham's been a report that he's going to be in some capacity here with the Bears front office.
That is a big time hire. I'm a massive fan of Ian Cunningham. There were two guys that typically came through Mississippi State to talk about our guys, to see our practices, to watch our games. Ian Cunningham, at the time, he was a director of college scouting, so he was one of the top 3, 4, 5 guys in that organization making decisions and getting that thing organized over there in Philadelphia. Big time guy, extremely intelligent, stoic. I mean, he's got it together. He's somebody that you want in the room, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
I wonder if this guy's going to take over the Champ Kelly role, because Champ Kelly now is rumored to be going to the Raiders potentially as an assistant GM under Dave Ziegler. The Raiders now tomorrow are interviewing Josh McDaniels. Rumors are that that's going to be their coach, and that's why Bisaccia probably is going to be available now for the Bears to be a special teams coordinator. So things are happening right now. Things are happening.
I was going to say, between the Eagles staff and Chiefs staff, there's a lot of familial connections. So I wouldn't be surprised if there ends up being sort of like, a symbiotic kind of like blending of Eagles and Chiefs, going forward. If he, poaches a couple guys from Kansas City, poaches a couple other guys from Philadelphia.
Is that Aubrey laughing at your analogy there? Was that Aubrey? Was that Aubrey laughing at your analogy? I heard her in the background, maybe.
No, that's probably the dog just being chaotic.
Okay.
So it's funny you mention that, because we know, Neil, you and I know this is a relationship business, right? Everyone hires people they know. So the connection between Poles and Eberflus, did you guys hear this? So the Mike Berzaghi, I think it's Berzingi, is also assistant player personnel director with the Chiefs. His brother is a linebackers coach with the Colts.
Okay, yeah.
So that's how Eberflus and Poles know each other through that connection. Now, of course, I think it's Dave Berzingi, I think it's pronounced. He's going to be coming probably with Eberflus here. I don't know if it's going to be a linebacker coach or maybe a defensive coordinator position. I'm not sure, but that's how the connection was made between the two.
Would love that move too, to be honest with you.
That is great. So I think one of the things that we should do, either our next show or any show before free agency frenzy starts in the NFL, we should, the three of us, look through that list and maybe even bring in a guest to look through that free agency list and talk about, guys, just like you did with the Chiefs and Colts, guys who might be attractive to this new administration. Then of course, the other thing is the draft. So before we start talking about the draft, just like the factor asked, what is the depth of this draft? Is this 2022 NFL draft going to be a deep one? Is it going to be deeper at some certain positions? What have you guys learned, and what can you share?
Well, for me, I mean, right now it's not a high in terms of a star-studded draft in my opinion. This is a draft that's got some depth in it, but it's got quality depth, but it doesn't have great star potential, right? Like right now, the talk about the first overall pick can be anywhere from Evan Neal to Aiden Hutchinson to Thibodeau, the pass rusher from Oregon. So it's all up in the air. There isn't that star quarterback. There isn't that, there's a couple of star pass rushers, a couple of offensive linemen that could potentially be franchise type tackles. So but there's depth throughout. So this is a draft that you want to have multiple day 2, day 3 picks, right? So if you're going to see, my opinion, my prediction is you're going to see a lot of guys in that bottom, that first round, try and trade out and try and get day 2, day 3 picks, because they can get some more depth here. And in terms of depth, talking about Neil, I don't know how far you've gone into it, but in terms of, for me, it's a lot of receivers. There's some solid running backs. There is some interior offensive line depth is pretty good in this draft. There are some pretty good interior defensive linemen here as well. So safety, I think, is going to be a pretty solid class by the time everything's all said and done. So I haven't dug deep into all those positions, but definitely, unfortunately, the offensive line is something that I've been looking at right now, and it's like the interior, I think, is where the Bears at this moment, if they resign James Daniels, might be okay there, right? Might not have to dip into the the 5 picks in the draft class to fill a need there. They might be able to fill in some depth with veteran free agency. However, the tackle, specifically the left tackle, and I don't know if you feel the same way I feel, but I think like the left tackle prospects, they're more like top 10, top 15. Getting one in the second, third round that's going to come in and potentially start within a year or two is kind of a crapshoot right now. And I'm seeing a lot of right tackle prospects, but I think we have the right side kind of fortified. At least we think, right, with Tevin Jenkins or Larry Borum there. So the only one, the left tackle one that I looked at and I think could come in and start, it might be in that second round range if you're looking for someone, is the kid from Ohio State, Nicholas, is it Petit Foray?
Yeah,
the Ohio State kid. Yeah, he's the kid that I think he's got. I
thought you said Iowa State at first.
No, I'm sorry, Ohio State. So he's a guy that's got athletic ability. Easy mover. He's a former basketball player, so you see the athletic ability there. His technique needs to be worked on. He's got to get a little more stronger in terms of his core and be able to handle some of those anchors, some of those bull rushes. But he's a guy that I think could be up there in a second round range that could potentially be a starter within a year or two. But man, I've been looking at left tackle specifically, and it's hard for me to find someone that can come in, within a year or two and be a potential starter at left tackle. I don't know how you feel, Neil, about that.
Well, I mean, obviously, I've said it, a couple other times on different shows that in terms of needs, I'm scared about the offensive line in general. The interior scares me probably more than the outside at the moment. But at the same time, I agree with you. I don't think that I really don't feel good about what we have right now at left tackle. If we could take our left tackle, move him to right, that'll make me feel a little bit better. Ultimately, I think both those guys will be really good interior players. The thing about it is you look at what's in the room right now, right? Cody Whitehair is the only one that we actually have under contract at the present moment, our left guard. So we got Sam Musserford, who is on the exemption free agent list. We got Daniels we could re-sign. I personally was not impressed by Daniels this year. I felt Daniels and Musserford both spent way too much time in the backfield. And then you got Alex Bars, who was sort of like your auxiliary player. He was your fun guy that Nagy likes to use. So Bars has performed decently well in the past. We saw him towards the tail end of 2020 perform, well at the right guard position specifically. But the thing is all three of those guys, along with Whitehair, we thought we had it figured out because we had those 4 guys on the interior, with one extra dude. Those 4 guys performed really well towards the back end of the year. Then all of a sudden we come into 2021 season and those guys are getting pushed around. Those guys are getting dominated up front by stronger players. Getting put on skates a lot, way too often for my liking. Me personally, I would look for, something to, fix that specific problem in this draft, if possible. Now, if you're looking at, the interior offensive line and the offensive tackles classes, I feel like if you're going to fix that need with one of the first 2 picks, you're talking about a top 100 guy. You probably have 11 tackles that could be top 100 players and maybe possibly 6 interior players that are top 100 guys with some more, quality depth, further on down, maybe around 3, 4, 5 guys. So I guess the whole thing that they need to figure out at Hallis Hall is what you're going to do with what you currently have in the room, right? And you're talking about Borum, you're talking about Whitehair, and you're talking about Tevin Jenkins, and then of the guys that are currently on the free agent list, if you bring back those guys, what is their role going to be? Because I think there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of moving pieces to this offensive line class right now, in terms of the draft and also in terms of what you have on the roster or could have on the roster, so where you can get kind of creative there. I feel, but I feel like whatever you decide to do, that first pick that you have has to be a high class, high quality offensive lineman that come in and start right away. And it'll just be a matter of, is that guy going to be, a versatile interior player? Is he going to be a bookend left tackle to, keep Justin Fields off his ass? What are we going to do there? I think that's the first and foremost the thing that we have to figure out. Yeah,
left tackle's got to be resolved because right now, like I agree with you. I don't think there's a player on this team right now because I'm assuming Jason Peters is not coming back that can play left tackle in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I just don't feel like that, and I don't. Tevin Jenkins is not left tackle. I think Tevin Jenkins might be a right tackle, maybe right guard. I think Larry Borum is probably a right tackle, right guard, whatever and that kind of combination there, wherever that works. I think those guys will be solid on the right side. James Daniels is my future center, and I know I might be in the minority here again, but a 24-year-old kid. I think his upside is still there. The guy's been yanked from center to left guard to right guard. Then last year when he was playing good at left guard, he tore his pec and got injured, and then came back this year. Yeah, he was bullied around a couple of, but he's a wide body athletic center. And the other thing we got to keep in mind, guys, is we don't know who this offensive line coach is going to be. We don't know what kind of system they're going to be running here. Are they going to be running a gap power scheme? Are they going to be running that zone scheme they've been running, the last couple of years? So, it all depends, right? If they go with a more gap power scheme, they're going to want more powerful guys up front. Then guys like Whitehair and for sure Mustafa are not going to cut the bill there. So you're going to have to kind of replace those guys as well. So it all kind of depends here in terms of what they do, in terms of what direction they go offensively with the coordinator and then the offensive line coach and all that stuff. So, but assuming they, Whitehair, I think will be solid at left guard. I think I love James Daniels at center. And then again, right guard, I got Tevin Jenkins or Larry Borum, and whichever one, doesn't win that position, gets the right tackle position. That, for me, at least I'm least comfortable with that. Now, do we need depth? Yeah. Hell yeah, we need depth behind those guys. 100%. The other thing is, but left tackle, I don't see anybody on this team that could play left tackle. So that's why I say if you, that's why I've been specifically looking at left tackles here in that 38th, 39th pick. And even if you trade down, I want to see someone maybe you can bring in later on. But again, the more you get down with left tackle, unless there's someone I haven't seen yet on tape, I just feel like you're kind of reaching. You're kind of hoping for a guy that can come in, and maybe be a starter within a year or two. So that's why I think free agency is where you go and get a veteran left tackle. We talked about Dwayne Brown, Eric Fisher, some of these stopgap guys that can come in, maybe 2-year contracts, 3-year contracts, and then be able to kind of, fill that need for you until you get, say, a guy in the 5th round and develop that guy, or maybe next year's draft, bring in a left tackle and help develop that guy as well. So that's what I'm looking at here on the offensive line.
Sure.
Before we jump in to talk about the Shrine Game and the Senior Bowl, I want to address some of the questions here that have been posed over the last 30 minutes or so. James Foster wanted to get your take on Donovan West for center.
You want to go? I haven't seen Donovan West yet. Do you want to go and take that one, Neil? Have you seen Donovan West?
I can't really speak on that, to be honest with you.
That's fine. James Foster also wanted to know, what about Luke Gadaki, 3rd round tackle? What's your take? And again, these guys are just scratching the surface with their scouting on stuff, so they may not have the intel yet. And if they don't, we will address it in upcoming shows. You guys at all want to comment on this tackle?
I believe that's the guy from Central Michigan. I think that's the right tackle from Central Michigan. Again, these are right tackle prospects, guys. And I think right tackle is a position that we have with Tevin Jenkins and with Larry Borum. One of those two guys is going to be the right tackle. So I'm not really looking at right tackle right now in terms of a position of need. I'm looking at specifically left tackle, and that kid from Central Michigan cannot play left tackle. The other kid, Raheem, can play left tackle, but he's a converted tight end. He just played left tackle for this last year and a half. So, but he's a guy that's going to be at the Senior Bowl. He's one of the guys that I have on my list here, and in terms I'm going to be watching and see how he develops there. But he's about 6'5", 303, 305 pounds. The other kid from Central Michigan.
Developmental guy all the way. I mean, really athletic dude, but he has.
But not a guy I was spent a 2nd round pick on, or a 3rd round pick. A guy, a day 3 guy for sure. Bring him and develop him. Again, get a stopgap veteran. You bring a kid like that kid from Central Michigan, and you can develop him in a couple of years. And he's just starting left tackle.
Scott wanted to know your thoughts on Sorensen, the strong safety, and possibly signing him. Would he be a guy you want to target? No,
that guy's been picked on. Daniel Sorensen from the Chiefs, I'm assuming he's talking. Yeah, no, a guy's been picked on. A guy's been benched. I would not bring him in. No.
And Bruce Holly Walter Jordan wanted to know if can Tonga become a 1-tech?
I don't. Maybe. I mean, maybe. Again, Tonga as a guy like a developmental kid, a guy who's got to get stronger and be more stout at the point of attack. Again, you're not going to be asking for a pass rush from him specifically. That's why I think guys like Eddie Goldman and Tonga could fill in. Now, I can see them getting creative on 3rd downs and going with what they call a NASCAR package, where you have the 2 guys and Mac and Quinn on the outside, and you go with a Travis Gibson and Mario Edwards Jr. at tackles, and you go with that, what the Giants call the NASCAR package. Now you just specifically just rushing the quarterback. So I think that could be creative on 3rd downs. But if you're specifically looking at a 1st or 2nd down player with Tonga here, and in terms of playing that 1 technique and being a run stopper, he can probably do it. You just got to get stronger and more stout at the point of attack, in my opinion.
He's got a big offseason ahead of him. I mean, we saw flashes from that kid. I had him on one of my top 10s in terms of interior defensive linemen when we're talking, position by position last year. Liked a lot of what you saw from him at BYU. But again, my whole thing was that particular position for us wasn't all that deep last year. I saw a guy that showed flashes as a developmental kid to take, exactly where we took him in the draft this past May. Thing about it is he's got a big offseason ahead of him. He's got to hit the weights. He's got to, develop into a strong, powerful dude to even have a shot to be a 3-down guy. But again, his whole thing is he's agile, he's nimble. He can be used to rush a passer, like Danny said. That's really what his role is going to be right now as we sit here today.
And just a quick note on the kid from Central Michigan, the left tackle. His name is Bernard Raymond. Raymond, 6'6", 306 pounds. Was a tight end. It's been converted over to left tackle. Has been starting a left tackle for them for the last year and a half. So that's a guy I got my eye on.
Very good. All right. Next big thing on the horizon for us here is going to be an evaluation of the college all-star games. So let's talk a little bit about the East-West Shrine Bowl game. It's being held in Las Vegas. I think it's a week from Thursday, is it this Thursday? This a week from today it is. Yeah,
I believe so. Sunday is the NFLPA game.
Correct.
That's in Pasadena, so that's Sunday, and then I think next week is the East-West Shrine, and then the 5th is the Senior Bowl.
Great. So I want to take a quick look at the East-West Shrine Bowl game roster first, and then we'll look at the Senior Bowl rosters. And guys, let me know if there's a name there that really stands out that you want to look into. And by the way, this is from NFL Sapient website. And it put this tweet up from Eric Galko. I want to get your impressions on this. 2 overdue announcements, writes Galko, for the Shrine Bowl game. 1, our rosters will be split solely by the NFL projected scheme. They'll be split by offensive personnel, 11 versus 12 personnel, and defensive personnel, 4-3 versus 3-4. Will allow players to impress at their future NFL position. I love that concept. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's a good idea, because that way now you can kind of, instead of projecting as you're watching them play, you can kind of see them in that role.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you need to develop and you need a different system, but you can see them in that personnel package. That's very good.
Love it. All right, so let's scroll down and look at some of these names. Just stop me, or
I have a couple names if you want to just kind of. So
go ahead.
for the Shrine game on the East roster, I'm obviously looking at guys. I'm looking at receiver. Receiver is a dire need here. Whether you attack it in free agency with veterans, we talked about the cap situation. That's going to cost you some money. So I'm thinking you're going to attack it with the draft and some low level free agents. But just guys that kind of caught my eye is Charleston.
This is the Shrine game, right?
Right.
Okay.
And the East roster. So, and one of the guys is Charleston Rambo, receiver from Miami. You guys might know that name because he played at Oklahoma and he transferred there last year. 6 feet, 180 pounds, 79 receptions, over 1,100 yards, average almost 15 yards a catch with 7 touchdowns. So I think that's a guy that gives you some of that big play potential down the field. Again, he was in a heavy pass offense at Oklahoma, transferred over to Miami, and had a pretty damn good season last year with the Hurricanes. Another big body receiver, 6 foot, Jakari Roberson from Wake Forest. 71 receptions, over 1,000 yards, average 15.2 yards per catch, and 8 touchdowns. Again, another guy is 6 feet, 85 pounds. So give you some of that, that ability to be able to go up there and make a play on a football. Love the way he contours his body, be able to adjust to the throw there as well. So keep an eye on Jakari Roberson from Wake Forest, a receiver. The offensive line, Myron Cunningham from Arkansas. He's a guy that last year thought was coming out, and I thought he had a chance to be a top, a day 2 pick, probably, for sure day 3 pick. From Arkansas, 6'5", 320 pounds. He's a 3-year starter at left tackle. Has played right tackle as well, so he gives you some of that versatility there as well. So you're looking at probably a day 3 guy here. So Myron Cunningham from Arkansas is a guy potentially you can bring in. I was talking about signing a veteran free agent at left tackle and then bringing in a young guy and developing and having him take over. Well, Myron Cunningham could be one of those players you take in day 3, put him on your develop on your bench, and then by next year or 2 years from now, he's your starting left tackle. So he gives you that potential. Again, can start at left or right tackle. So he gives you some of that versatility there as well. So Myron Cunningham is a guy that keep an eye on the East roster for the East-West Shrine game. Alec Lindstrom. We just talked about James Daniels. Is he going to be re-signed? He's only 24 years old. I think he's your center. I think you re-sign him and bring him back and plug him in center and leave him at center. However, things happen. If he gets a big offer, they might go ahead and let him go. Alec Lindstrom is a guy. His father and brother actually played in the NFL. His brother Chris Lindstrom was a first-round pick of the Falcons. So if he's from Boston College, about a little undersized, about 6'1", 300 pounds, but he's a scrappy center. Again, depending on what scheme you're going to be running here, are you going to be running a gap scheme? You're going to be running, an athletic, a zone scheme. So we're going to take a look and see what they come here. But he could be a guy to keep an eye on in terms of a potential day 3 pick at center. Defensive back, I'm looking at safeties, man. I'm looking at guys that can bring the thunder. And this is a guy that I love watching him play. Aggressive as hell, and that's Bubba Bolden, strong safety from Miami. 6'2", 200 pounds. He's another guy that transferred from USC over to Miami, a 2-year starter, 135 tackles in his career, 10 tackles for loss and 2 interceptions. Not a big ball hawk, but he's more of a guy that's going to bring that physical presence in the backfield. The only concern I have about him is, again, some range liability and coverage. The other thing is injuries. I mean, the guy plays so hard and he hits so hard, he always gets himself hurt. So you're going to keep an eye on him in terms of, being able to, again, day 3 guy can come in, potentially be a future strong safety for you there as well. So that's a guy from as terms of the defensive backfield. Neil, do you have anybody from the East squad before I go to my West team?
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of DBs, we gotta get secondary guys. The kid that's kind of intriguing to me is Jermaine Waller from Virginia Tech. Jermaine Waller. I can access my notes here real quick. He's a dude that I mean, a lot of stabs. He's a love-hate guy, but very smooth athlete, great cover. Great coverage guy. He's got ball skills. Those are the things that people love about him. Others question his size. They feel like he might be just a little bit too thin. They feel he's a developmental and he struggles in contested situations. But what he is athletically and what he can do in coverage is you don't really question that much. And we need guys that can cover. We need guys that can make some plays on the ball. The Brad Hawkins kid from Michigan, I think, is really intriguing, just from a standpoint that in terms of strong safeties, we need a guy that's thick, that's physical, and come down and lay some wood. He's a strong safety with size and physicality, to also be a cover backer in some sub packages. So position versatility is something that's really interesting with him. Some interesting D linemen that aren't really much on the radar that I can remember from the days in recruiting and also just names to just kind of keep an eye on is Noah Ellis out of Idaho, LeBrian Ray out of Alabama, and Taylor Humphrey out of Louisiana are 3 guys. They're big body dudes that showed a lot of promise, athleticism, power. More developmental guys, early on in their careers, but now they're back on the radar as all-star game participants. It'd just be interesting to see what those guys do in that kind of arena, if that makes sense.
But the only thing with those guys is they're more nose tackles. I don't know if these guys have a place in this new system, in this 4-3 Matt Eberflus system. That's the only question with those guys I have.
Well, again, like, what are we going to do with Eddie Goldman? You know what I mean? It'll just be what do they decide to do actually with that specific position? Is the only reason why I'm kind of paying attention to that position. I mean, there's a lot of guys, a handful, 5-6 guys in terms of interior defensive linemen that are going to be difference makers in this draft. We'll have no chance of getting any single one of them, but it's just worth keeping an eye on. That's all I'm saying about that, really. And then I almost forgot, secondary wise, Wanye Thomas from Georgia Tech is another guy that's really intriguing to me from a safety position. Wanye Thomas for versatility. He has strong safety toughness, physicality with speed, range, the ball hawkery of a free safety. He's probably a guy that would go in like the 3 to 5 range. He'd be a mid-draft, type of guy. And people say that he's a big-time vocal leader. So, and you always want to have a guy back there that has versatility, that can be physical, but also does have a ton of range. And at the safety position, you also want leaders as well. So that's a guy that I'm going to keep an eye on as well.
Great stuff, gentlemen.
I have guys on the West team if you have time.
Please go for it.
All right. Yeah, West team, again, receivers. This is a little different guy here. Emeka Emizi from NC State, 6'2", 220 pound, big body possession type receiver, not a guy that's going to be a flashy guy. He's not a guy that's going to create on his own, but he's a guy that can get you go up and make a play on those 50-50 jump balls. So Emeka Emizi is a kid from NC State to keep an eye on. Again, big body receiver. Speed deficiency is going to be his issue. He's not going to run a 4.4 or anything like that. He's probably going to be in a high 4.5s, maybe even in the low 4.6s. So again, a guy just going to be able to go up and make plays down the field on just those contested, catches. Talk about the opposite. Talk about a guy who's got a burner, who's got a guy can accelerate away from defenders. That's Tyquan Thornton from Baylor, 6'2", 180 pounds, skinny kid, but the guy's got some speed. He had 62 receptions this year. Averaged 15.3 yards per catch with 10 touchdowns. Again, tall, thin, speed receiver, has that what I call easy speed. You just see him just kind of blowing away from defenders downfield. Nice hands to be able to extend away from his frame and be able to bring the catch in, can contour his body and adjust to the ball. So he's a guy that can give you some of that size and some of that big play potential down the field. Ran a limited route tree at Baylor, didn't run out the full route tree. So he's a guy that's still kind of might be falling to that developmental kind of territory category there, if you will, but definitely a guy that brings us that big play potential downfield. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a couple deep balls in this game to him specifically. And that's Tyquan Thornton from Baylor. Offensive lineman, this guy. This is a guy, Jackson Kirkland from Washington. Measurables are there for me, 6'6", 305. The guy's a two-time All Pac-12 first-team player. A guy's played. He's a 4-year starter. He started 25 games at right guard, and he started 16 games at left tackle. You put on his tape, and you like his nastiness, you like his demeanor. The guy who likes to finish. The guy who plays through the whistle. But man, I don't know if you've seen him yet, Neil, but I mean, his body his lower half is just thin as heck, and he's so underdeveloped in terms of his legs, right? It just looks odd, and you see it getting bullied and getting pushed back, and just walked back, and he might be a guy that might struggle on the outside, but he could be a guy potentially inside a guard. I just love his temperament in terms of how hard he plays and looking to always finish his blocks. And again, he gives you that, he jumps out of his stance pretty quick. So he has that athletic ability, but just that underdeveloped lower half is just really striking, and something that I'm just not sure he can play left tackle in the NFL, but definitely a guy that's going to have a place on a roster, possibly inside a guard. So Jackson Kirkland is a guy from Washington to keep an eye on as well.
Very good. Let's move on now to the Senior Bowl. Let's since you've looked at it from the roster standpoint, Danny, do you want to start with the American team?
Sure. American team. Okay, linebackers here. I got Channing Tidwell from Georgia, 6'2", 230 pounds, 67 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. We just talked about the need for a middle linebacker. He's a guy that could possibly play middle linebacker. He's got some pretty damn good speed, an athletic kid. If not, he's probably got a guy to kick out to a strong side position. So linebackers we're going to be looking at here in these all-star games. And Channing Tindall is a guy from Georgia. The other guy from Georgia is Quay Walker. This might be a little bit me just kind of hoping he falls to the Bears, but this is the guy that could potentially go in that low first round, high second round. So if he's in that area, he's probably going to be out of the Bears range, because I don't think they're going to go a linebacker that early. But another guy, 65 tackles, tackling machine. You talk about a guy potentially playing middle linebacker for you in that defense. Quay Walker from Georgia is a guy to keep an eye on. Neil, we talked about defensive line, right? I'm looking at 3 technique. I'm looking at a case Bilal Nichols, who's a free agent, doesn't come back, is not re-signed. Devontae Wyatt from Georgia is another guy. I'm loving my SEC. I'm loving my Bulldogs here, guys. Georgia defensive lineman, 6'2", 310 pounds. This guy's an ideal 3 technique. He got lost in the shuffle with all those stars that are on that Georgia team, but this is the guy that can penetrate that gap. You line him up to the outside shoulder of a guard, either inside or outside shoulder of a guard in that 3 technique position. This is a guy that can shoot those gaps, get upfield, and cause some havoc in the backfield. And if you watch Georgia games this year, he wasn't the big name guy, but you saw him making plays all the time, big time. And then the receiver, I was told, keep an eye on Jalen Tolbert from South Alabama. He's a guy, 6'2", 285 pounds, had 82 receptions, almost 1,500 yards, averaged 18 yards a catch, and 8 touchdowns. So he's got some size. He's got some ability to make some plays downfield. So Jalen Tolbert from South Alabama, they'll be playing in his home stadium. So look for him to kind of shine in those one-on-one opportunities there and down in Mobile. So those are my guys from the American team to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that Tolbert kid absolutely torched the Sun Belt Conference this year. Over 1,000-yard receiver.
I had 2 scouts tell me keep an eye on him. He might be the guy that shines this weekend.
Absolutely.
Or next weekend.
By the way,
I mean, in terms of receivers, there's a couple other guys that I'm really looking at too. I mean, one I talked about a lot, even last year, is that Danny Gray from SMU. I mean, you're talking about a dude that has speed, explosiveness, can separate. He's a big play. Just big time. Shine when the lights are brightest. Type of dude that is gonna just blow people away in Indianapolis during the combine. His athletic measurables are going to be off the charts. And then a guy that I think could also be a little bit of a sleeper is a Dontario Drummond kid from Ole Miss. I've been saying that
slot receiver, big time.
He's a big 6'2", 205 pound type kid.
But
he might be up to 220 now. But
at Ole Miss, when I put up some of his tape, I saw they line him up in a slot, and I don't know if that was just Lane Kiffin lining up in a slot. And he took advantage of that opportunity in the slot, so I think he could play there as well.
Yeah, he took over for Moore, and he became the number one receiver in that offense. Another guy that just had a ton of stats that may not have gotten all the recognition that he deserved, but he's another guy that I expect to shine. From the wide receiver position. You talk about Quay Walker, he's a stud. Damone Clark is probably going to go first round, and he probably won't fall to us. But in terms of a guy that's versatile, that could blitz, that could hit, that can cover, that could pretty much go sideline to sideline, he's an amazing player, and you'd love to have him in the locker room. The offensive line position, that's going to be worth watching. I like Ed Ingram out of LSU, physical, nasty, powerful, wide body guy, interior guy. Dylan Parham could be a center if we decide to go ahead and take a center with an offensive line pick. Cade Mays out of Tennessee. Dylan Parham was from Memphis. Cade Mays out of Tennessee is a guy who probably is going to fit in the interior.
Probably going to be a guard, though.
Yeah, he'll fit in the interior at the next level, but at the same time, he's 6'6", 300 plus. Played all 5 positions during his career at Tennessee. Really intriguing kid. There's a couple of tailbacks I love. We're not going to take a tailback. If you look at these DBs, Tariq Woolen, extremely intriguing. He's from UTSA. The buzz on him is that he's a guy that needs a good Senior Bowl, could have day 2 potential. Freak athlete, raw, has size, but he's raw. He has some issues in his background from a character and medical standpoint that will need to get figure out during the interview process. But man, that's a extremely athletic kid that is explosive and can jump high and run fast. And then Alontae Taylor from Tennessee, corner. That was a kid that had a lot of promise coming up. Didn't have the best 2021 season that you expect him to have, but a quality player throughout the 4 years that he played for Tennessee. I want to see what he can do. At the all-star level and in this particular arena. So I think he could be a guy that, we could take with maybe an early day 3 pick.
One guy I left off here real quick, Neil, is another DB. That's Cam Taylor-Britt from Nebraska. 5'11", 205, 4-year starter. We're talking about, guys that are going to probably excel in off coverage and be real good tacklers. 140 tackles for his career, 10 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 5 interceptions, and 22 passes defense. So keep an eye on Cam Taylor-Britt from Nebraska there at defensive back.
And Fedarian Mathis, the interior D lineman from Alabama. I mean, both Fedarian Mathis, Devontae Wyatt. I mean, if you watch that national title game, like those are 2 guys that really made quarterbacks uneasy and made a bunch of plays in the backfield, just like all out disruptors. Impressive, watching them play a couple weeks ago.
Did Darren Kendrick not make the Senior Bowl? The kid from Georgia, the cornerback.
He is. He's in Vegas.
East West Shrine. Really?
I think so.
Yeah, he's a kid. He really intrigues me a lot, man. Now I know he's got some off the field stuff. Obviously, he was dismissed from Clemson, but you watch that Georgia defense again. SEC bias here. My Go Dogs here. Last year I was the what'd you call me with Texas? The Texas
Hookem Danny.
Hookem Danny.
Danny
so,
Hookem.
So this I'm gonna be Go Dogs Danny. But yeah, Darian Kendrick, man. I'm telling you, if you get this kid in that day 2, day 3 area, fluid kid. Again, transfer from Clemson because he was dismissed from the team. I mean, he's a fluid mover. Guy had 41 tackles, 4 interceptions, 3 pass defenses past year. Really, took kind of progressed and got really good there towards end there of the season for Georgia. So Darian Kendrick from Georgia, a cornerback. Again, guys, corners, linebackers, offensive linemen, specifically tackles, middle linebackers, safeties, receivers. Maybe a tight end. These are all positions we're going to be looking at here.
Oh, Darian Kendrick. He's in Mobile.
Is he? Okay.
He's on the American team.
Okay. Just want to make sure I didn't miss him there.
All right. National team.
National team. Okay. Johan Dotson, Penn State, 5'10", Dynamo, 180 pounds, 91 receptions, 1,182 yards, 12 touchdowns. We're talking about a guy who's got speed, big play potential. We talked about this. This defense is going to get a lot of speed on it. I think this offense needs a lot of speed. So obviously we need to see who the offensive coordinator is going to be, what type of system they're going to build around Justin Fields. But man, I've been crying for these players for about 2-3 years now. Just these guys get the ball in their hands, let them do their thing in the open field, let them create, with that speed and that ability to just kind of accelerate and get away from defenders. So, Jahan Dotson, again, this guy might be a late first round pick, might be we'll go in the second round. So maybe it's wishful thinking. Maybe the Bears trade down from that second round pick and get some more picks, and they can get him in a mid to late second round if he lasts that long. But Jahan Dotson is a playmaker on at receiver. Khalil Shakir, receiver from Boise State, 5'11", 185 pounds, another guy, more of a straight line, fast kid. 77 receptions, almost 1,200 yards in receiving, averaging 14.5 yards per catch with 7 touchdowns. So another guy bringing some of that speed element on offense at the receiver position, a guy I'm looking at. And the other guy on the national team I've already kind of touched on here is that Bernard Raymond from Central Michigan, the converted tight end to left tackles, 6'5", 6'6", 300 pounds, athletic as heck. I just want to see how he does, especially those one-on-ones with those big defensive linemen. I want to see how he handles there and see if he's made that full transition or if he's going to be going into the league as just basically a developmental player, a guy that you kind of put on your bench and just hope to your coaching staff builds up into a starter eventually.
Yeah, some of these DBs on this national team are intriguing to me. And in terms of cornerback being a potential late round need that where we can fill some depth and maybe find a sleeper. I like Penn State's Tariq Castro-Fields. I like Pittsburgh's Damari Mathis, Washington State's Jalen Watson. In terms of Castro-Fields for Penn State, he was a guy that had a lot of buzz preseason. Probably started the year off, higher up on draft boards. Had a little bit rough here, struggled with his eyes and instincts a little bit. Gave up some big plays. But he's a guy that has some decent size, that has all the athletic measurables. Could be a sleeper, a guy that could potentially fall to a day 3 pick that we could fall into and end up with a Thomas Graham type of kid. Same thing with these other two. Damari Mathis from Pittsburgh. He's a cover corner with physicality. He's a tough, willing tackler. He plays bigger than he is. Probably the smallest kid that I actually have on my list, and by small I mean like 5'11", 190. But when you got guys that are tough, that are willing tacklers, that play bigger than their size, it's hard to turn away, especially when they're big time players. Jalen Watson from Washington State is a guy with great size and length, and he's a cover guy all the way. I've been watching those guys, especially in the DB room. I like the Kobe Bryant kid out of Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like a wild card to me. Big time player. What is he? Where is he going to go? What's he going to look like? What's he going to run? All those.
Is he a slot? You think he's a slot corner?
He could be a nickel. I think he could fit really well there. But I mean, that's the thing, is that he's such a wild card. It'll be fun to see exactly what he ends up looking like over the course of the All-Star game in that particular arena. When we get him to Indianapolis, what's he going to run? How is he going to navigate the drills? I think the interview process is going to be huge for him as well.
And I actually love Roger McCreary from Auburn. I think that guy will be a perfect fit now here for this defense, especially a guy that big, guy's physical corner, 4-year starter, 5'11", 190 pounds, 30 pass defense, 6 interceptions in his career. He's got ball skills, a guy that can come down and make plays in the run defense. So I think he'll be a phenomenal fit. If they keep that second round pick and he's there that day too, I wouldn't mind them going in and picking him and just running with him and Jalen Johnson as their starting cornerbacks.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Sterling Weatherford from Miami, Ohio. I think he's really intriguing. He's a kid that plays safety, but he's a type of dude that, has a size and the physicality and also the athletic measurables to be drafted, up into a linebacker position, which is actually what he's working out at, during his time in Mobile. And I was excited to see that because he's exactly the type of dude that you draft down in terms of position, because he's got the physicality and the size and the speed to be able to, potentially be a difference maker, at least in special teams. He'll probably be a late pick, but in terms of developmental guy, he's really intriguing. If you look at the offensive lineman that they have on this particular side of the ball, the Zion Johnson kid from Boston College, I really liked last year, and was a guy that was potentially coming out. He decided to stay. I
love Zion Johnson.
Yeah,
I think he has Pro Bowl potential within 2 or 3 years in the league.
Yeah, 100%. He was a guy that played left tackle last year. He moved inside the guard this year, and incredibly smart kid, could probably play all 5 positions, kind of like the kid from Northwestern last year. They ended up playing left tackle for where did he go?
Rashawn Slater, Chargers.
Rashawn Slater, yeah,
Chargers,
he went to the Chargers. Rashawn Slater's, I felt last year like he was a kid that was incredibly smart, could position really well at center, can easily play both guard positions, functional at tackle, although it's probably not where he's going, to ultimately, fit the best. Zion Johnson to me is the same type of kid, maybe not as athletic, as, twitchy, as all those things, but he's going to test really well and he's going to impress in the pre-draft meetings. I'm really intrigued about that kid. You talk about some big boys, Daniel Falele, the 6'8", 400-pound Australian.
Yeah, he's a pretty good athlete for that size, man. But he's a right tackle. I mean, he's not gonna play left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a big athletic dude. Is the point I'm getting at? He was a former rugby player when he was over in Australia. Came over, played his high school ball, like 1 or 2 years of high school ball at IMG, and signed with Minnesota. Just a big athletic freaking dude, man. Yeah. Northern Iowa's Trevor Penning. Last year, Northern Iowa had the twin towers of Penning and what was the other kid's name?
Spencer Brown.
Spencer Brown and Trevor Penning, twin towers on the ends.
He's intriguing for me too. Yep.
Abraham Lucas was a guy that we kind of looked at last year as a potential coming out kid. I think he's intriguing enough to if he falls to a day 3. He was a kid going into the season I felt had day 2 potential, but he's probably a day 3 guy. But he's got size, he's got length. And
doesn't have the quickness to play left tackle though. I think he's got to be a right tackle or inside. And I'm surprised you have him on your list because he hasn't finished a lot of his blocks. That's one thing I said. Oh, Niel's not gonna like this guy. He hasn't finished a lot of his blocks.
I just look at his fundamentals. He's technically sound. He does it the right way. He's not a mean, nasty dude like I like. But we also just need to get guys on the field that can handle their responsibilities.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of hip stiffness, and I think if his position, probably if it's going to be inside a guard, most likely I would love to see him at tackle, but I just don't think he's going to hold up on the island there by himself.
And the thing about it is he could be best inside, but he has enough good film for him to play somewhere, and so I want to get a really good look at him this week and see exactly what he is and where they put him. Because he played left tackle, he could be a right guard, could be a right tackle, he could go a bunch of different places. Let's see, where am I at here? I think that might be it for this national team. The wide receivers I mentioned on a couple shows prior. The wide receiver position on this team has Alec Pierce, from Cincinnati. He was a kid that had a really good showing against Notre Dame. Made a bunch of big plays. I hate to use this particular vernacular we're talking about receivers, but sneaky fast. What the hell is sneaky fast? But I mean, he really is. Like, he doesn't look like he's moving very fast, but he's covering a lot of ground.
It's because he's white. That's why.
That's probably got to be it. We'd be a racist, Danny.
Really?
Cooper Kupp is fast and he's white.
I remember.
No, but he's legit fast though. Like, he's a legit explosive. Alec Pierce, he's not explosive, man. He runs really well. He's going to be a 4.5 kid once he gets to the combine. Romeo Doubs from Nevada, I think, could be a guy that surprises some people. Nobody's really talking about him. He's got really good size. He's like 6'2", 200 plus. Caught like 1,000 yards worth of balls from Carson Strong. This past season, didn't get the fanfare, but a guy I'm going to keep an eye on because the stats are there, the size is there, I think the speed is there, just from the few clips that I've watched. The Christian Watson kid from North Dakota State, you never look past the Fighting Bison, man. The FCS Championship Invitational, North Dakota State Invitational, yeah. And I mean, you talk about John Dotson, that kid's just a ball of explosion. So those are the guys that I'm going to keep an eye on. The Cole Turner kid from Nevada, the tight end.
The tight ends are positioning that I kind of have in the back of my mind. I just don't. 5 picks is like you need tight ends. You know, what are you going to do here? It's just I hate being limited. You know how much it hurts me to only have 5 picks, Aldo? Oh, it hurts me.
Hurts me too, man.
Tight end is a intriguing position as well.
Really intriguing player.
All right, we got about 15 minutes left, maybe a little less than that. So what I want to do is I asked people in the chat room a few minutes ago to submit their questions. So I'd like to go through these as quickly as possible. Let me go with I Am Scox first. He says, we got that one already. Good. Get that one out of there. Bear Truth 9 question. Is this draft, are you building the trenches over a wide receiver position with that first pick, which is in the second round? So with talent and production level equal? So, in other words, you're drafting offensive line first, right, guys?
Yeah.
If the grade is equal, like the question says here, if between offensive lineman and receiver, yes, I'm drafting offensive line because that's where your team is built. I will steadfast be of that rule. You build your offense and defensive line, you're going to have a solid football team. So I think you go offensive line, defensive line. Now, specifically, Neil and I differ a little bit. I think interior you can kind of mix and match with some of the guys we have currently on the roster, but I think my specific need, whether it's in the draft or it's in the veteran free agents, is a starting left tackle. I don't think you have anyone on this roster currently that's going to be able to start for you 17 games at left tackle. So I think you need to address that position, whether it's early on in free agency or it's here in the draft. But that's specifically what I'm looking at.
Yeah, offensive line all the way. Pick number one has to be a lineman. That's the most dire need position that we have. I think the wide receiver position is deep enough to where you can find a guy, day two, if you want to go that route. I think you go with either a safety or linebacker day two with that third round pick. But, I feel like, regardless, you got to take with pick number 38, you got to go offensive line.
Excellent. All right, let's get this one out of the way from Tony. The pod boss wants to know the most pressing pick for the Bears if they have to just pick one. And what he means by that is a position player. So do you think, well, you just answered that, Danny. You said the left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll ask you, Neil, if you got one, the very first pick you got, do you have one position group that you think is the absolute most pressing?
If one of these 6, 7, 8 offensive tackles that could probably come in and start day one in this draft fall to us, yeah, you got to take that guy immediately. I don't think there's any question about that.
Very good. Don Burr, our resident Detroit Lions fan, wants to know about Eric Ikumna, the wide receiver from Texas Tech. Have any of you had a chance to look at his tape? And if so, what do you think?
I haven't. Not yet.
I know Don will be here for the show when you guys are covering them. So covering that particular player. Foster says, Aldo, my other question is your take on Gene Dixon, the wide receiver.
Dejon Dixon, the kid from Nichols?
Yes.
Let me see. What did I write about him? I haven't gotten, knee deep into, a lot of these receivers, but Dejon Dixon, I had down, my big thing about this receiver class, guys, is, for, a couple years now, we've had nothing but super midgets in that room. I know we have Allen Robinson, but outside of Allen Robinson, we've had nothing but guys that are, sub 5'11", but run fast. So my thing was, if we take a receiver, he's got to be big. He's got to, win one-on-one battles, be a red zone presence, and, have some speed. So, Dejon Dixon is a kid that, ended up at FCS because he had some issue that kind of messed up his recruitment, at the high school level. But he ended up in Nicholls State. He's a big kid. Definitely fits the bill for a guy with size, with athletic ability that's going to test well. Had tons of stats this past year. I'm going to take a deeper dive into the guy, but he's definitely intriguing. He's on my list of guys to consider in terms of a guy that's big, fast, strong, physical, and can go up and get a ball.
Very good. Tony, the pod boss, do you think that Darian Kennard could slide to number 39 for the Chicago Bears?
I do. I think he'll be there. I just don't know if I take him at 39. Again, for me, he's a right tackle. I'm specifically using that 39th pick for a guy that I know can come in and play left tackle for me. And I don't think Darian Kennard can be a left tackle in the NFL, starting left tackle. I've only gone to a couple of games, seen only a couple of the games. I'll do a deeper dive on him. But I definitely think he's a starting right tackle in the NFL. But again, I'm for me at least, I'm not looking at right tackles right now. I'm just looking specifically at left tackle at this current moment. Now, if something changes once the new regime comes in and they cut players or they trade certain players and that becomes a need, things change. But as of right now, excuse me, it's left tackle for me.
Very good. Matthew wants to know about Penn State University safety Joaquin Brisker. I saw your eyes light up. So go ahead and take that one.
I'm taking Neil, or should I go?
Yeah, Jaquan Brisker. I mean, there are 3 safeties in this class that really make me go wow. And it's Kyle Hamilton, Jaquan Brisker, and Dax Hill. Big, explosive guys. Playmakers, tacklers, hitters. They check all the boxes. Jaquan Brisker, love the kid. Probably won't be around for us, though.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, I don't think he was going to be there. He might go a late first round, for sure, top of second round. So I don't think he'll be there by the time the Bears look at.
Very good. Another question from Tony is, what do you think of Troy Anderson from Montana State? He kind of reminds Tony of a faster Brian Urlacher. I haven't seen this guy play, so if he's a faster Urlacher, I definitely want to take a look at him. If you guys have,
he's a guy on my list to watch because obviously I'm digging. I've been digging into offensive linemen. Now I'm going to flip over to defense a little bit more, linebackers now, cornerbacks. But yeah, Troy Anderson's a guy I'm gonna dig in. I've heard a lot of good things about him as well.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. How about Mo Beerman wanted to know about those games on Saturday. Did you guys have a bet or something, Danny?
How about that game Saturday?
How about that game Saturday, Danny? Any gems? Oh, about I'm not sure. What do you mean?
Have a softball game or something? Web gems?
He's
talking about web gems?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is he talking about the collegiate, the NFL PA game?
I must have misread the question. I would have skipped that because it looks pretty bizarre. But Mo, if you want to clarify that, let us know. J Rock wanted to know about free agent linebacker Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith. So what do you think about those guys perhaps coming in and playing under this 4-3 defense we're anticipating?
There are possibilities, but for me, Jalen Smith, I think we all know that he's not the player that he was prior to the injury at Notre Dame. Unfortunately, I think if he was fully healthy, I think he'd be a guy possibly a candidate for the inside middle linebacker position. Van Der Esch, I think, also a guy that's dealt with a lot of injuries, but when he's been on the field, he's been productive. I'm not sure if I'd see him as more of an inside linebacker, maybe a strong side linebacker. So that could be someone that they can kind of bring in, but he has some history with them in terms of the coaching staff. So maybe more of an strong side linebacker, but not a guy that I'd see as an inside linebacker. I just don't think he's that athletic. And again, the injury concern with him is something that you have to think about as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Jalen Smith, when he had that injury in 2016, Eberflus was the one in 2017 that really made the most out of what that kid had. And like I said before at the beginning of the show, Jalen Smith kind of credits who he became as a player to Matt Eberflus's ability to develop players. And so if Eberflus feels like he wants to have a charity case and have a resurrection, bring Lazarus back to life, I can see that happening. But that'll be interesting. I mean, Jalen Smith when Eberflus had him in his position meeting room, he was a hell of a player. I just don't know if we can get him back to 2017 Jalen Smith or not.
Last question. Give Rock Davis one wide receiver name that you think could fall to the top of the Bears pick in the second round, and that you would say, man, you gotta pick this guy up.
And off the top of my head, I got three guys that and I can't give you one because I love these receivers. So George Pickens, the kid from Georgia, a big body guy. I have some off the field stuff you have to be kind of dig into, but a guy that came off an ACL injury this year, came back and played for the playoffs. A guy that, I'm kind of an Allen Robinson mold, guy can go up there and make some plays on those contested catches. So George Pickens from Georgia is one of them. I think one of the Ohio State guys is going to fall, guys, and I think it's going to be Chris Olave. And I think he's a guy that's going to run at the combine, is going to run a 4.4. High 4.40, and I think you bring him in with Justin Fields. You got that connection already there. So I think Chris Olave is a guy to keep an eye on if he falls out of the first round in that second round. And the other guy I was thinking of was Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson, if he doesn't go in the bottom of the first round, could be a top of the second round kind of guy. And again, we should talk about him. Penn State kid, 5'11", 180 some pounds, speed galore, guy, big play potential, and that's what you need on this offense, big play potential.
You got a name for him?
Going with my prototypes, big, strong, athletic, and fast. Definitely George Pickens was one that I had on my list too, Danny. I also had Drake London from USC, 1,000-yard receiver after 8 games before a season-ending ankle fracture. Talking about a red zone and a yak guy. How far is he going to drop? Could he be there round 2, round 3 for us? He's a guy that was projected around 1 guy before.
I think he's still going in the first round. Like, that guy's that damn good. Drake.
David Bell's a guy that I think could be there round 2, round 3. Polished, fundamentally sound from Purdue, 2,000+ yard receiving years with a 600-yard year in 2020. Probably would have had 3,000-yard receiving years if the 2020 madness didn't happen. Like him a lot. The other kid, I mean, if Jalen Torberg really tears up this Senior Bowl and tears up the combine, he'll be a day 2 guy, guys.
Yeah,
and he's a guy that's 6'4", pushing 200. That we know he's going to run fast if he performs well during these events. Look for him to be, prime pickings at a area where we could potentially, grab a guy on day 2. And
Go ahead, finish your list. No, go finish your guys.
I was looking, but no, that's good. Those are the guys that really I have.
With Bell, if and I don't know, on tape he doesn't look like he's a 4.4 guy. He looks like he might be like a high 4, maybe a high, low 4.5 guy, mid 4.5 guy. If he runs that, I think that's going to be disappointing. I think that's going to drop him a little bit. But he's a guy that might be available with that 3rd round pick, or if you trade down
exactly
in
what I was thinking.
Yeah. So I think that's a guy if you can double dip there and go get the lineman or the safety or the linebacker that drops out of the 1st round, and then get that receiver like a David Bell. I think that would be a hell of a 1-2 combination there in the 2nd and 3rd round.
Hey, let's think about this for a second, guys. Jameson Williams, he has that ACL.
He's going 1st round.
Yeah, but he had the ACL. It could scare some guys away. I'm just saying he could slip a little.
He could slip. He's going to slip. Yeah, unfortunately, I think he would have been the top 10, top 15 for sure pick. But now I think he's going 20s, in the 20s.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys are going to want to look at that medical evaluation, see how that thing, ruptured, how the surgery went, what's the chances of a full 100% recovery. So he has all that speed, that explosiveness, that big time playmaking ability back. There's just a lot of questions there to me that need to get answered. Granted, he could be just that much of a freak athlete where he heals back to, the Jameson Williams he was before the injury. But I think it's worth tossing around.
Well, what's funny is he came from Ohio State, and imagine him with Smith and Jagba and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Damn, that's one hell of a 4 receivers there on one team there. But he transferred and was
kind of like last year at Bama.
Yeah. Well, no, these are Ohio State receivers, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like, the collection of receivers, collection of talent there.
What a fantastic way to start this season. Outstanding episode. And what great timing, right? We get together for our season debut on the day that the Chicago Bears hire their head coach. Now the 2 big positions are in hand. Now we got to get a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, and coaching staff. That will probably all be completed or very close to being completed by the next time we come on, which will be Thursday, February 3rd. We're taking next week off. Why? Because we got to watch the Shrine Bowl game, and these guys are going to take notes, and they're going to be prepared on that show on February 3rd to talk about those All-Star games. So we'll have a special guest. We're going to have a very robust discussion about what's happened on all those All-Star games. And Danny's interrupting me because I probably screwed something up.
Next Thursday is February 3rd.
So we're back to 10th, February 10th. Thank you.
I was really confused.
My calendar, I screwed it up. But by the way, I got to show you this. So a lot of people have been negative about the Chicago Bears, and I don't blame them. Wrong shot. I don't blame them. The Chicago Bears have just make so many mistakes, not only with who they've hired, but also with their calendars. This is the 2022 Chicago Bears calendar. Look who they have for January, the player for the cover. It's A-Rob, the player who won't be playing for the Bears in January, February, March, or any month this year. Then look who they have in February. Hey, it's Charles Leno.
Wow.
22.
What are we doing?
Yeah, so that was, I think that was more egregious than Robinson, because at least A-Rob's still technically part of the team in January.
Yep.
Now March he won't be part of the team, but so that would be different. But Leno has been gone for a year.
Yep, and it gets arguably worse. Anthony Miller in March.
Wow,
Jesus, and then the pièce de resistance is number 9. Good old, that's not Jim McMahon. That's Nick Foles for April.
Wow,
that's just a measure of futility right there.
That's George got a deal on printing these calendars early. He got a deal, so he just took advantage of it, and now he's just giving them out, even though these players aren't on the roster anymore.
Sweet hell.
Unbelievable. But that is our show. Any final words quickly, guys? Because I know we've got a hard out at 10 o'clock or somebody gets kicked out of the bedroom.
No, I'm just excited for another season of Draft on Tap. We got a different format. We didn't get into it tonight, but we got a different format here for you guys. We'll probably get into our next show here. Aldo will kind of explain to you what we're doing this year. But just love it. We just kind of tip of the iceberg here tonight with some of these names here. We're going to do deeper dives in, and we're going to have a fun format, and we're going to keep you guys entertained, and hopefully, like I said, our goal last year was to when the draft picks were made, you guys would say, "Oh, I know these guys. I remember, Neil and Danny were talking about them, so I remember these guys." So that's the goal again this year, is to make sure, keep you guys informed and take your your questions, and just the guys you want us to scout. If we don't go over them in our particular lists or our particular groups, just give us his names either on Twitter or reach out to us here in the chat, and we'll just we'll come back the following week with a scouting report on those players. So I'm just excited and ready to go, man. This is go season right now.
There you go.
Yeah, Danny hit exactly what I wanted to cover, man. Like, we love the audience participation. Hit us up, the week before the show. Give us your names. Ask us your specific questions. Let us know who you want us to cover, if there's anybody specific. Because we'll go in and dive into anybody. If there's like the Troy Anderson kid from Montana State, I would love to see what that kid's all about. I wish I was able to get a peek at it before the show. But that's the type of stuff that we love. So keep that stuff coming. Ask us questions. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. The show on Facebook and everything else. Hit the like button wherever you can. Let's have an awesome year, man. I'm excited to come back in a couple of weeks and talk to you guys about these All-Star games.
You guys are the absolute best. We all appreciate how hard you guys work in preparation for the shows. Some of the other shows, people just show up and just share their opinions. You guys have to watch tape over and over and over again in order to share informed opinions. So not I'm knocking anybody. I just wanted to point out how hard you guys work to prepare for each show, and it's greatly appreciated. All right, everybody. We've got more football talk tomorrow. Greg Gabriel is going to do his Gabriel Talks football show tomorrow to give his thoughts on the new hires over at Hallis Hall. And we're also scheduled to have a very special guest, his buddy and mine, and everybody in the bar room loves, JJ Stankovitz. He's going to join Greg and me, and we're going to have a great talk at about noon tomorrow. So that is it. We've got a great collection of programmings on the on-demand YouTube. And so if you like hockey, any of the other sports, check out what's going on there. Goodbye, everybody.